Do you see what I see? As a visual communication designer, we ask this question to ourselves every day because when we design something that needs to communicate something to you, to influence the way you think, to make you feel some way, we have to measure the effectiveness of our design by this very question: do you see what I see? But the most amazing thing about seeing is how relative it is. We may be seeing the same thing, but how we perceive it really depends on our own points of reference and our own context. So my love affair with design started with this blank white space and a black dot in the middle of it. And in our Design 101 class, we were asked, I was asked, what do you see? And I said, well, I see a black dot on a white space. But somebody else said, no, I see that as a point of focus. And somebody else said, no, that's a really lonely black dot. It's a black dot in a wide, in a black void, in a white void, and it's a lonely black dot. And then when you have two dots, something different happens. And I say, oh, that black dot is not lonely anymore, but you may say, oh, they're separate. The two dots are separated by this big white space. And then you have many black dots. And personally, I say, oh my God, that's congestion, that's noise, that's claustrophobia. And my 16-year-old daughter might say, oh, those black dots are having so much fun, they're having a party. So really, we're saying the same thing, but depends on where you're coming from. You would interpret the same thing very, very differently. And the way you see something really depends on your own point of reference. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my personal journey as a designer. And I have two very different and contrasting points of reference that have shaped the way I see and the way I design. So I studied design at Yale, which was founded on this modernist ideology of form follows function. But design thinking was changing, and we were asked to think increasingly about context and culture and our own personal voice as a designer, and our own identity as designers. So in those very impressionable years in my late teens, I was traveling a lot back and forth between the US and India. And I became increasingly aware that I was seeing things differently depending on where I was geographically. And the same thing I would perceive very differently as I shifted boundaries. So when I came home, the streetscape seemed chaotic and crazy and full, and they still do. But then when I stepped away and I went back to the US, I forgot the chaos, and all I remembered were those amazing, we don't see these anymore. I would remember these emotive, beautiful, dramatic, hand-painted billboards. And, the beautiful craftsmanship that you tend to overlook when you become all too familiar with it. And then I'd go back to the US, and the streetscapes would seem monotonous and drab and lacking color. But then when I came back and stepped away from it, I would marvel at the civility of life there and the systems and grids that held life together, from streetscapes to books. So it's really these two very different influences of a very rational way, a structured way of looking at life, and a very emotive and intuitive way of designing that I began to weave together in my work as a designer. And in design language, on the one hand, you had less is more, used very few carefully chosen elements to communicate a really powerful message. And the other was more is more. Say what you want to say blow horn, but have fun saying it. Fill the space, decorate, put color, excite the senses. And then I'd go back, and you'd have, in the West, at least in the 90s, things are different now. The streets were all black. People were afraid of color. And then I'd come back here, and as cliched as it may sound, there's an infusion of color. We celebrate color, we love it. And today things are different, as our lives have become, the world has become more seamless and boundaries are blurring. You see a lot of black here. And in the streets of New York and London, you see an infusion of blocks of color. And it's exactly this that really excites me. What happens when visually, when cultures cross over? And how does our visual landscape change with that crossing over? So let's take this quintessential multiple-armed figure of the mother goddess. She means something to us in the Indian perspective, but what happens when she goes west? She takes on many different avatars. This is the first cover of Ms. Magazine. It's a feminist magazine from the 70s. She becomes the cover. She becomes a plastic superhero, Michael Jordan. and Jimi Hendrix even. So she takes on a life of her own, and she becomes many different things that may be very alien to us. And then what happens when this quintessential Western icon of beauty, Barbie with her blonde hair and blue eyes, comes to India? You know, she wears a sari, she has black hair, and now she's Indian. And really, we get this bizarre, some hybrid sort of visual mix of things and a hybrid language that comes about, which is a reflection of how cultures are evolving, how we're sharing from each other, and how shifts are happening in the way cultures evolve. And that's really expressed through this hybrid language. So, as a designer practicing in a rapidly changing India, I've really enjoyed observing and being a part of this mixing of influences. But I have to say that, in the chaos that surrounds us, a very rational, modern approach to design still informs the way we communicate and organize information. But at the same time, for design to be relevant, it's got to be contextual. So we've really enjoyed embracing our local context and drawing from visual traditions. And it's in this space between global and local that I would locate my work as a designer. So one of the things that's really interested me over the years is how an entire culture can be represented through typography. You see these are restaurant signages for Indian restaurants, both in India and from the streets of New York. And it doesn't matter whether you understand what mantra means or what gandha means, but you just see it and you know the kind of experience you're going to have when you go in there, right? You know that you're going to get a certain kind of food, and you'll have a certain experience when you go into this restaurant. And the same with this Chinese, bamboo-looking Chinese typography. But and it's a no-brainer. What you see is what you get. You know what you're going to get. But as designers, we tend to be very snobbish about using this kind of vernacular kitsch typography. So this is a project that I worked on many, many years ago. This is in grad school, this was my thesis project, where I said, okay, can we look at typography and create a typeface that draws references from being Indian, but is not stereotypical and is not kitsch. So this is a font called Curry, and it's a mix of different ingredients. And what I did was I took a very academic approach, and I worked with a reed pen, which is what you see there, and it's cut at an angle opposite to that of the quill. The reed pen was used for writing Devanagari, and the quill was used for writing the Roman letter form. So I used the reed pen and combined influences with Uncial, which is a Latin script, and created this typeface called Curry. And there's certain letter forms like the E and the G, which draw references from certain Hindi letters. And you may not overtly see that this looks like Hindi, but there's something about it. The angles are opposite to that of what you see in Roman, and there's something about it that doesn't look like a regular English letter typeface. And then later we created a book out of it, and we looked at hybrid language. And there's so many words in the English dictionary like yoga and karma and shampoo and aubergine even, which have their roots in Indian languages, but we don't even know that that's where they come from. And this was a type specimen book we used to write these hybrid words in this hybrid typeface. And this is another designer in India doing some amazing, amazing work in hybrid expressive typography. His name is Hanif Qureshi. And he works with these street painter artists, these guys who do your juice signs, and signboard painters, and they're nearly extinct. They don't have much work. So what he's done is he's worked with these signboard painters, and he's digitized their paintings, and he's creating these amazing typefaces. Each one is named after the painter. And so what happens is that not only is he providing sustenance to these guys, but he is also preserving for us and for our future generations this really, really rich part of our urban landscape, which probably future generations are not going to see. And another great example of hybrid typography is this. Today we see the rupee symbol and we just take it for granted. But imagine before we had that, we had RS written in Helvetica, and it could look like something that you would see anywhere in the world. But this to me is a great example of a great balance between local and global, where you've got the rupee symbol and it looks completely on par with the dollar or the pound or any other global currency, but it has a really distinct identity to it There's a calligraphic nature to it, which the ones on the right don't have, drawing references from Devanagari. And then you have the R, which is drawn from the letter R. So I'm going to talk a little bit about MTV. So when MTV first came to India, they did something really interesting. They did something that today we take so much for granted. They looked at our urban streetscape, they looked at popular culture, and they repackaged it, and they gave back to us something humorous and something exotic, an exotic perception of our own culture by mixing street culture with Western ideas of design and programming. So when they came to us to design their MTV office in Bangalore, this was done in '98, and I did this with my husband Sandeep, who's an architect. Um, this was my first opportunity to see, okay, you theorize about global, local, and mixing influences, but how do you actually put it to practice? And is there a space for it in the real world? So when we designed the MTV office, it was a shoestring budget, but we had great fun. And what we did was, we did what MTV was doing, which was repackaging the ordinary and taking it out of context and creating something new and extraordinary out of it. So we worked with these these billboard artists who did these amazing, I showed you in the beginning, these amazing larger than life, emotive posters, film posters, which you don't see anymore because all you see is digital vinyl, slick graphics these days. They were going out to work. So I found this guy, Sampath. He was this amazing artist, and I worked with him, collaborated with him, working between the hand and the computer to create these larger-than-life, hyper-colorful, kitsch graphics on these walls. The auto rickshaw became our reception table, and we had this collage of Andy Warhol-inspired images that we had taken of South Indian South Indian film stars and printed them on Polaroid cases. This was a really kind of kitsch fun approach to bringing a local context into an office. And then 17 years later, we've just finished this space, which is really quite different. This is for SanDisk, which is a multinational technology company. And they set up their India headquarters in Bangalore. And when they came to us to us to bring, sort of breathe some life into their space, they wanted an office which was going to be really high-tech, like their office, their headquarters in Cupertino. But SanDisk is actually founded by an Indian, and he was very emotional about the fact that he was setting up this big office in India, and he wanted to embrace and bring sort of a local context into the space. So, but at the same time, he wanted the office to look very international and not be, too in your face, and work with their brand colors. So we took the idea of Kolam. It's something so beautiful that we see outside our doors every day. And on this simple grid of dots, you can create the most amazing sort of body of organic patterns and decorations. So we, inspired by that, we brought these, we did these really large and small graphic patterns in different materials, some in relief. We even created a typeface out of it on that grid and did the entire wayfinding system. And so this balance between the fact that you have this underlying grid which is so systematic and you can create such beautiful organic patterns on it seemed to be the perfect blend of global and local for this multinational office. But sometimes we're faced with the challenge of, we're a massive country, and you're faced with the challenge of what Indian really is. What Indian is to me may be very different than what Indian is to you. We have varied visual languages, varied aesthetics. So this was a question that I really had to ask myself even when we were designing this brand identity for a museum. MAP is the Museum of Art and Photography, and the collection is pretty much from the Indian subcontinent. So when we were asked to create this identity, we really thought about, this is an Indian art and design museum and photography museum. Should it look Indian? And then what really is Indian? And we decided that it's impossible to kind of bring in an idea of Indian into one symbol. And so we stayed away from that, and we really took a much more conceptual approach and worked with what is really unique about the museum, which is that it has 6 disciplines. And the way it curates its shows is that it crosses these disciplines. And it has a very interdisciplinary and dynamic approach to curating. So we had this hexagonal grid, which is based on the 6 disciplines, but then the lines cross each other. And this becomes the foundation for the entire identity. So you have a 6-sided M, which is the main logo, but then you have a brand language of different widgets that form with these 6 lines that basically relate to the way that the museum creates new narratives in the way that it curates its shows. But having done this, we really felt that there's got to be some essence of India. And while we may not be able to pin down a look that is Indian, I think it would be fair to say that we love color. And if I, as a designer, say to you, Pantone 607, unless you're a designer, you won't know what I'm talking about. And if you're not a designer, it's going to be a number. It's not something that you can relate to. But that's how color is looked at globally. They're given numbers. But in India, we have an emotional connect with color. Because if I say gulabi to you, you can smell it, you can feel it. There's a texture that you associate with it. And across the country, wherever you may go, I think that we have an innate and cultural connect with color. So we made color our connect for the identity, and we had this really vibrant color palette of gulabi, firozi, amras, sharbati, begani, and kohl. And this comes together as a really bold and dynamic color palette, which is very different from the way a museum would be branded anywhere in the world. They tend to be very reserved and monochromatic. Can you just play the animation?
Dim tarikita tagadiga tarikita tarikita tadim tadim ginda tum tadim tarikita tagadiga tarikita tarikita tadim tadim ginda tum dim tadim ginda tum tadim tarikita tagadiga tarikita tarikita tadim tadim ginda tum dim tadim ginda tum dim tadim ginda tum dim tadim ginda tum dim tadim ginda tum ta.
So, as designers practicing in a changing India, we have so many exciting possibilities to choose from. How global or local should a design be? How traditional or modern should it be? It really depends on who we are designing for, what the context of the project is, and on a designer's and the designer's own personal voice. But the most exciting thing really is that we have this, we're really privileged to have an amazing reservoir to draw from. And in this mad rush for globalization and this euphoria of development, I hope that we don't get lost in the monotony of sameness. And that as agents of contemporary culture, we really engage meaningfully both with the past and the present to create a vibrant and eclectic visual language that is uniquely ours. Thank you.